Hello and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about looking at how we can use Microsoft AI over the top of your existing or new knowledge base. So if you've not met me before, my name's Dougie Wood. I'm a Microsoft MVP and I'm also a solution architect in the Power Platform using Microsoft products. If you've not connected with me in the past before, feel free to do so. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a QR code on the screen there. If you scan that, I'll open up my LinkedIn page and just drop me a message and let me know how you're thinking about using chatbots and improving your AI. If you've not heard of Valto before, Valto, we are essentially a Microsoft partner that specializes in a few core areas, including digital and app innovation. We have low code specializations, working with intelligent automations, and essentially our slogan is that Valto builds the intelligent workplace of the future using Microsoft AI. So the topics for today, we're going to be looking a little bit at the challenges that we see. So very commonly we get people coming to us and talking to us about knowledge related challenges, and they're looking for solutions using Microsoft, specifically SharePoint and Copilot and other Microsoft AI solutions. So before we jump into those pieces, I would want to explain what Microsoft are kind of putting out there as the AI adoption journey. What does that look like? As everybody kind of falls under one kind of area, and there's things that they need to improve, and there's things that they need to do ahead of actually jumping into using things like Copilot and other Microsoft AI products. We're going to talk a bit about using SharePoint as a knowledge base. Now, if you're not fancying using SharePoint as a knowledge base, that's totally fine. You can use Microsoft chatbots over the top of any database or any knowledge base that you currently have. However, if you're using Microsoft 365 and you're paying for the licenses, it makes sense just to use SharePoint as that knowledge base. So we're going to take a little look at some real world examples of how you can use SharePoint as a knowledge base. AI chatbots over your knowledge base. So we're going to look at some real world examples. Specifically, we've got some about policies and sort of getting people's questions answered from HR. Again, managing that kind of internal knowledge that comes with policies, procedures. We're also going to look at case management. So for the legal industry, we're speaking to a lot of people in the legal industry at the moment and looking at ways that AI can help speed up processes, like getting information from specific legal cases. And then at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about how Valto can build AI solutions and how we can help you with that journey. And if you do want any professional services in helping set up either a knowledge base or a AI solution such as a chatbot, there's a link in the description below to contact us, and you can book in a free 1-hour consultation. So what are the challenges that we see? And as I say, we have people come to us with all sorts of different questions from different industries, different business shapes and sizes, but there's a lot of very consistent themes running through these challenges. The first one is about new starters, onboarding employees. Now, this can be a very challenging time anyway, but there's a lot that a new employee has to upskill and learn very quickly. Now, this often is done by what we refer to as tribal knowledge, as in new starters are relying on the tribe, the other colleagues, to answer questions for them, help them get up to speed and find information, documents, policies, procedures, tools, software, all these different things that they need to know very quickly, and often just relies on somebody in the team being that person. But again, it can be slow, it can be inconsistent, and that brings us on to the next thing is, well, what if actually that expert within the team was to leave? Now, people leaving is actually a massive concern. A lot of people that we speak to, actually we speak to a lot of kind of manufacturing companies which are very worried about this because they have a lot of staff who have been there for donkey's years, decades, and when they leave, they're very concerned that they're going to leave and take that knowledge with them. Now, it might not necessarily even be a malicious thing that they're leaving and going to a competitor, which obviously is a concern, but it could just be that they're just leaving and leaving people a little bit in the dark because all the knowledge, the experience, the guidance, the expert advice that they once provided is going to leave with them. Now, as I say, this often is something that is not necessarily considered by businesses as one of the kind of potential things which is a downside of someone leaving the business. So we've got to think about how actually we can capture that information, and we're going to come on to looking at some examples later about how you can use SharePoint as a knowledge base to capture those types of information in a few different ways, and then store that. As long as it's in SharePoint, it could be a document, it could be a page, it could be just some text, a transcript from a Teams meeting that's been recorded. As long as it's in SharePoint, we're going to be able to use Microsoft AI solutions to surface that, to make sure that even when someone leaves the business, that information still stays within the business. Now, a real world example of that, as I say, we spoke with a manufacturer recently where actually they were creating products. I think let's just say that it was soap, for example. And what they were finding was, they're worried about, they had some staff which had been there for, as I say, 10, 20, 30 years, and they're close to retirement at this point. But they are the type of people in these meetings, when they're talking about launching a new soap for a certain supermarket, for example, these guys and girls who have been there for a long time and close to retirement, they would bring their kind of experience and knowledge to those meetings and say, hey, you don't want to build a soap of that size and that shape because it's never going to fit on the shelf, or it's going to have this problem, or whatever it is, or we tried that particular formula of soap 10 years ago and it caused a load of problems. And they have all of this knowledge in their head. So they're looking at how they can basically offload those types of information. They can use AI to generate even the questions to ask those people to feed that information back into a knowledge base such as SharePoint, that in the future, once they've left and retired, their colleagues can still ask those similar types of questions and get a similar response back from a knowledge-based solution. We also have problems with customers, and it isn't just customers, but this is something that I've just seen a lot speaking with kind of people in the retail industry, where there's inconsistencies in answers. So, for example, a customer could call up or even turn up in a shop if you have a physical premise, and they could ask 5 different employees, and quite often you'd get 5 sometimes very different answers from your employees. So this could be somebody's asking about returns policy, for example, and if it's just down to someone's knowledge about what the returns policy is, you could ask 5 people, and 2 people might say, yeah, sure, that's fine. You can return that without a receipt or whatever it is, or it's damaged slightly. That's fine. Yeah, we can take that. And the 3 other people might say, oh no, we can't do that. We can't do that. And that's going to cause a real problem because it's going to give inconsistencies in the experience that you're giving to your customers. So this, again, is just going to degrade kind of the trust, the brand, and everything as part of your business. So what you really want is you want to have your knowledge base as a single source of truth, where all of the information that is required to answer questions to customers, suppliers, or just employees in general is in a single source of truth. And then you can have an AI solution surface those answers of any questions that people might have, and it's going to be consistent every single time because it's pulling from the latest information. Now, one of the things that you do have to basically keep in mind is that you might have a knowledge base, you might have SharePoint, you might have an intranet, you might have documents stored somewhere, but are they up to date? Are they cleansed? Are you making sure that documents are staying up to date? Now, you can achieve this in SharePoint using retention policies and labels to make sure that documents actually stay up to date on a periodic basis. We're also going to look at how we can use what we call our controlled document system to make sure that documents stay up to date and revised, so that basically you're never going to be surfacing old, out of date information to your employees via AI when they ask certain questions, which surfaces that information. And then finally, accessibility. Now, what I mean by this is people, and especially employees nowadays, are expecting to be able to access information anywhere from any device. Now, employees often want quick answers, and in this day and age of information, you don't have to wait days or weeks to hear back from, say, for example, you've got a question about a policy, and you go to HR team and you maybe send them an email or Teams message, and you've got to wait for a response a couple of days to get something back from them. Or from finance, maybe you're asking about the expense process and how you can get expenses paid, things like that. You don't want to have to wait days to hear back from them. Whereas actually, what you want to be able to do is from any device, and then say people are out and about, people are on mobile phones. People want to be able to ask questions and get instant responses. And what you can do with your mobile phone is access these chatbots that Microsoft provide and access to your knowledge. And people can ask questions, say, hey, what is our expense request policy? Or how do I submit it? And it just goes away, gets that information and surfaces it back to the employee. In fact, a real world example of this is we're currently working with a customer who is based actually in the US. And they have a very large workforce, but that workforce is quite young. People straight out of college, university kind of age. These people are using things like ChatGPT already on a day-to-day basis. They're familiar with chat interfaces. They come to expect that. And in fact, actually, their world experience is that they're not familiar with digging through files and folders and things like that. They just want to use a chat interface. So we're working with them to basically enable a chat interface, which is going to actually be surfaced via Microsoft Teams, but the back end of it is SharePoint. So it's all their policies. They have about 1,000 different PDFs, policies, procedures, things like that. Common things like what's our policies on having tattoos and things like that is a very common question that they were forever being asked. So they've got this now documented. It's in SharePoint, and people can ask those types of questions to the chatbot interface, and it'll surface that information for them nice and quickly, I say, directly by using their mobile phone. So how do we get to the position where we have all of this information up to date, cleansed, ready to go, in a safe, secure manner, that AI can be trusted to be let loose on it to answer questions for people? Now, this is what we are referring to as the journey to the intelligent workplace. The intelligent workplace is where data is safely secured, well, basically safely captured, secured, and then using AI over the top of it to automate certain things, kick off workflows, things like that, but also answer questions and give information and knowledge to employees and even external parties, customers, suppliers, things like that. But you have to transition through a number of different stages. Now, stage one is what I refer to as the data depression. Now, as I say, you might not be in this phase, but there's plenty of other businesses out there who are still very much in this phase. The data depression phase is where the business is currently using lots of paper-based processes, messy spreadsheets, Excel documents coming out of your ears all over the place, manual processes, maybe, as I say, pieces of paper. We worked with an organization recently who basically fitted out very large buildings. They were interior designers, but they still had people going up and down the country, going to meetings with customers and saying, okay, well, what types of curtains do you want in this? They were fitting out hotels and things like that. They're saying, what types of curtains do you want in your hotel? What type of carpets do you want? And they were literally writing all this down on pieces of paper, which of course meant there was loads of human error. There were certain fields which weren't populated. There's certain quantities that weren't populated. Maybe there was stock which was out of stock. They couldn't get hold of that type of fabric anymore. All these different things were an absolute nightmare for that customer. And again, poor communication. It could be that you're relying on emails, phone calls. In that scenario, that use case I was just saying there, people are having to make phone calls and check, is a certain fabric still in stock? Things like that. It was all very chaos, essentially, driven. It was basically causing this data depression. Now, we then move into the second stage of this journey to the intelligent workplace, which is what we're referring to as the cloud adoption stage. Now, if you've got loads of paper, spreadsheets in stage one, maybe you've got file servers still, a NAS, maybe you've got all these different things. You need to migrate them and make sure they're inside of Microsoft 365, and this is the cloud adoption phase. Now, as I say, most of the customers, I must admit, as a majority of our customers, are in stage 2 or above. We still deal with people in stage 1, and also not nothing's linear in the fact that you will be 100% in stage 2. You might be 80% in stage 2, but you still have some messy spreadsheets that need to be organized. Maybe you need a SharePoint intranet to provide that kind of single source of truth. But stage 2 is where you're basically securing all of your documents in the cloud. You're using Microsoft Teams to help with poor communication. You're using SharePoint to mop up any kind of paper-based processes and things like that. You've got OneDrive, where you've got your own personal document storage space, and you're using the Microsoft apps like Planner, To Do, and all these other cool additional things that you get as part of your Microsoft 365 license. Obviously, you need to make sure you're fully then secured as best as possible, and that moves us on to stage 3, which is process automation. Now, this stage, often a lot of people confuse AI solutions for process automation, but we want to call out this is a totally different phase. Process automation is not really, it shouldn't really be your AI phase. It should come before this. And this is where we're talking about, say, those paper-based processes, replacing them with Power Apps, whether it be Canvas Power Apps, model-driven Power Apps Pages. Basically having a consistent way that you are capturing data and storing it safely, securely inside of Microsoft 365. So you're building out your digital app. So for example, your expense request process is no longer a set of Excel spreadsheets and emails floating around. It is a mobile app that people are taking pictures of receipts, submitting it to their line managers. Their line managers are approving it, and all that information is going to your finance team to pay those expenses. And that fits into that kind of workflow automation. So again, we're getting rid of those manual processes. And then the final step of this is then once you're capturing the data, so you've actually got accurate data and you're storing it in a very nice, secure, structured way, you can report on it. You can start making better human-led decisions, but with Power BI surfacing dashboards of information that you can quickly access, see KPIs, see charts, see things as they're happening in live time, and actually start making better real-world decisions. So going back to that scenario before, those interior designers who were fitting out giant hotels, they had a Power App, which again was pulling in latest stock information, things like that, so they could place orders of certain types of curtains, things like that, and they could generate a quote there and then in front of the customer. They didn't have to go and call somebody else to generate a quote. They didn't have any mistakes anymore. There was not things that somebody was taking a day to travel back to the office with some pieces of paper and only to realize, oh, I totally forgot to ask the quantity of beds that they needed for this hotel or whatever the question is, and they have to phone them up. All of that is captured right there and then. Plus, all the data is then easy to access, so they could then have reports to show, well, actually, are there any trends? Is there certain types of fabrics we're selling more than another? Is there certain types of furniture ranges which are being purchased together? Is there certain times of year where there's better business, and other trends like that which they were able to spot using Power BI as that, as I say, that platform to surface that information. And then the fourth stage and the final stage is this intelligent workplace. And this is essentially where you've got all of this information now readily available, and you can start having AI over the top of it. Of course, you need to make sure everything is cleansed, up to date. You've got security and permissions in place so that people can only access things that they should be able to access, because essentially AI is only acting on behalf of a user. So it will only be able to access things that that user can access. So you need to make sure that everything is properly secured. But at this stage, this is where that you're obviously going to be considering your AI strategy. How is this going to be impacting your business? What hours is it going to save? What costs is it going to save? What's it going to be automating? It can also be bringing in things like AI insights. So there might be things that, say in stage 3 still requires a lot of manual intervention to decide and make decisions on information, whereas AI might surface things that a human just didn't spot. This is when you're thinking about Copilot adoption, so using Microsoft 365 Copilot or Copilot Studio, which is these chatbot agents that we're going to come on to look at some examples of shortly. And building out those bespoke agents for whatever use case you might have. We're going to look at some use cases of answering policies information and legal cases and things like that. But there's so many other things that you could possibly have a chatbot specifically doing. Another thing that we're looking at with a very large entertainment company who runs theme parks is they want to be able to have a employee type chatbot where they can actually request new uniforms, for example, and then that taps into a little database of things that they're allowed to order, maybe even show previous orders that they've had and only allow them to order certain amounts of uniform in a certain period of time. But then they can take their order and say, okay, so you want an XL polo and you want it in this color or whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. And the workflow kicked off in the background will even go and order it from the supplier. When it comes into the reception, it can then also have a kind of email that's sent to the employee to say, hey, come and pick up your uniform. It's now in reception for you. Things like that. We also have the ability in the future to have the equivalent of AI colleagues. So at the moment, we're thinking about chatbots as they're very kind of transactional. Very soon, and something that Microsoft have very recently announced at the Microsoft Ignite conference, is that you can start to expect more autonomous based agents doing things in the background and coming to you for approval to do things rather than you going to the chatbot. So those are the types of things which are coming down the line. The way that Microsoft are pitching this kind of growth journey, essentially, as in what products they're mapping to this journey, is the first thing is completely for free. Right now, you can access Microsoft Copilot. Now, what you get with that free Copilot is the ability to ask questions and get information based on information on the web. So it's only grounded in the web at the moment, meaning it's basically a direct competitor to ChatGPT. So you'd say, well, why would you use Copilot, the free version, over ChatGPT? And it's because Copilot is still, even the free version, is still governed by your identity and authentication of Microsoft 365. So users and employees still log in using their email address and password, and everything is secured by enterprise level protection as part of that. So nothing is getting leaked. Any information which shared with Copilot stays within inside of your organization. The AI model is never trained on anything that you give it. So, for example, if for whatever reason your employees were putting in customer sensitive data and information like credit card information or home addresses or things like that, if they were using ChatGPT to do that, ChatGPT model is being trained on live data. So there's a good chance. There is a chance that data could be surfaced to somebody else, which would be obviously a GDPR issue, a data breach issue, and a large problem. Whereas if you're using Copilot, even the free version, you're completely protected. The second stage is what they say, this is the buying stage. You need now to buy something. And this is where you've got things like Microsoft 365 Copilot, Security Copilot, and Dynamics 365. So mostly we're seeing people looking at the Microsoft 365 Copilot piece, which is basically where you get licensed. And this is where it does everything that I just said before, but you can also surface information from your own Microsoft 365 tenant. It can create documents. You can create PowerPoints, Excel, Word documents, things like that. You can search and find information. You can create documents from another document and so much more. It kind of speeds everything up because you can find things quicker. You can create things quicker. It's basically just putting your employees kind of on a kind of productivity boost, essentially. You then can look at stage 3, which is extending, which is all about tailoring your data and systems and workflows via agents. Again, this is low code agents. So these might be role-based AI agents. So you can get your hands on things like the researcher agents. If you wanted some really deep dive research, there are pre-built agents from Microsoft that you can get your hands on. SharePoint agents. So this might be you've got a set of SharePoint documents and you can create an agent which answers questions on them at a click of a button. Agent Builder and Copilot Studio, where then you can extend out and you can build more things. And this is what we're going to come on to looking at shortly. And then the final stage is build, and this is where you're looking at pro code. Now you can do this with Copilot Studio. So if you're already building very low code types of chatbots with Copilot Studio, you can extend that, or you can go into the pro developer areas, which is known as Azure AI Foundry. And this is where you can do a lot more advanced things, than you can do with Copilot Studio, and it takes it to that kind of next layer where if you're looking for really kind of sort of bespoke AI solutions, that's the kind of camp that you'll be looking at. Okay, so now let's look at SharePoint knowledge bases. So there are two ways of thinking about SharePoint knowledge bases. You've got the first option, which is pages. So you could have pages like wikis, like knowledge articles and things like that. Pieces of text, essentially, that maybe you've copied from documents or you've copied from other websites or external portals, or you've just handwritten yourself. The second is documents. So actually, a lot of people aren't quite ready to have that kind of SharePoint user interface, and they just want to have their documents maybe moved from a third-party document storage area into SharePoint so that it can be used as a knowledge base for your AI chatbot that sits over the top of it. So let's look at some examples of this now. So let's say the first option is we can store our knowledge as pages inside of SharePoint. And this is a very, very basic knowledge base. I know it's not overly pretty. It's just showing you the simple functionality. Essentially, a knowledge base is a SharePoint site with multiple layers to it, multiple kind of areas. So it might be that you have a knowledge base, and then for us, for Valto, we've broken this down into the types of knowledge that we want to store, which include things like information about how we conduct our SharePoint or AI workshops, our sales information, our marketing information, things like how we conduct webinars, YouTube videos, we have in-person events, things like that. Our project management, so information on how our project management works, and our best practices around development, consultancy, and all the different products that we offer. So things like this knowledge base we offer as a product that we can deploy to our customers for a fixed price. So we have all of our product information here. By clicking into an area, say like our workshops, we can then start seeing in a text-based format key information about things like how we run a workshop, step-by-step information. You can see useful contacts, people to contact about how maybe these are almost like expert consultants that we have internally that we can contact. And then we have related documents. So again, related documents to that text, because again, you could run it as like hybrid where you've got some pages, some text, things like that. Or you could do it 100% as documents. Now, the way that we do this is using a SharePoint document library. And as I said before, we have a pre-built solution to make sure that your documents stay up to date, so that AI is surfacing documents which are kept up to date, cleansed, and things like that. We can apply this over the top of pages as well, but we tend to find most people still want to work with documents rather than pages. So it's totally up to you how you apply this. But at a high level, this solution, as I say, which we can offer fixed price and deploy to your SharePoint, will be applied over a single SharePoint document library. It will control the versioning with approval statuses, so each document has to go through an approval process. We can tag departments, so if we want to quickly find documents based on a particular department, we can filter them down here. But realistically, what we're most interested in when it comes to AI is that we want to make sure that these documents stay up to date. So every document has a review date. On that review date, our system will automatically contact the reviewer to say, hey, come and check this document, make sure it's up to date. They make any amendments. They then submit it for approval to make sure that that content is up to date and it is containing everything and that approver is happy with it. Then it's marked as approved and everyone can access it, including things like Copilot, Copilot Studio, and these chatbots that we're talking about can service that information. But you are confident that that information is actually up to date. And it's something that it's, as I say, this is your single source of truth. It's somewhere that you are confident that all the information in here is now up to date and you're happy that any employee can ask questions against this information. Now let's take a look at an employee policies chatbot. Now that we understand that we can have SharePoint as a document library, which keeps all of our documents up to date with proper review dates and reminders to our reviewers to come and update these documents, we can then have our chat interfaces. So if I jump back into, say, for example, office.com, which is the homepage of Microsoft 365, I can jump into chatbots. So for example, I've got a controlled documents agent. And within here, this is where I can ask questions, which is going to be surfacing information directly from this controlled documents library. So I could maybe ask it about our kind of expense policy or our disciplinary policy, complaints policy, things like that. And it's going to surface information for me. So if I come back into here, I might say, for example, you can see it's already understanding because it knows where the information is pulling from. It's already giving me ideas on like, what is our policy on me working at home alone in the office? Give me a short summary of our complaints policy. It already knows what the knowledge it's looking at. So each agent is like a master expert of a certain sort of topic. In this case, it's our employee policies. So I can ask it a question. I can either type it in or you can see a suggested question here. That's then obviously going to go and tap into my control documents and start answering questions for me. So it's going to pull out information directly from, in this case, it's going to be our lone working policy, I imagine. So you can see here, this is the lone working policy in the office. This is the information you need to know. Emergency procedures, communications, and monitoring. So this is answering all the information that we might need to know. It's also referencing, this is, you can see here, it's referencing the lone worker policy. And if I was to click on that, that would actually open up the exact document. So it's actually just warning me that I can move away, but I can say, yeah, continue. And that would actually open up the exact document that we wanted to see. Because one of the issues is that some people don't trust that AI is going to give them the right answers. So being able to go and jump in and check where it's referencing getting this information from is vital. We can obviously follow up more questions on this. So it might be, say, for example, I'll say, what is our expense request policy? And again, it's going to be answering these questions as if it was like a HR employee, but it's giving me this information straight away. You can see, again, it's giving me all this information on expense request submission policy, the approval requirement. So it might be, I have a follow-up question, say something like, who will approve my expenses? And this is a beauty of a chatbot for this type of thing, because it doesn't matter the exact way that I phrase the question. It understands contextually what I'm asking. So say, for example, previously before this kind of chatbot interface, if I was looking to find out how many holiday days I get a year, I would have to go and manually search either through the files folders, maybe even if it was on a SharePoint site, I'd have to go and find, is it on the HR site? Is it on the human resources site? Whatever it's called, and go and find, and I'm looking for maybe holiday policy, for example. If I'm using the search bar in SharePoint and typing holiday policy, it might not surface it to me if, for example, the policy was known as the annual leave policy. Whereas actually the difference is with a chatbot interface like this, it understands that holiday and annual leave is just the same thing. It's not contextually, it knows that they're the same thing, and it's not looking for a hard-coded value of holiday policy. And if it doesn't find holiday policy, it's just going to come back and say, sorry, I can't find anything. It understands it's the same as annual leave policy, and it's going to surface up that information to me in a nice, easy way. Case management chatbots. Now, again, we speak to a lot of legal-based companies, and what they are constantly looking for is information on cases. So actually a part of their case management process, quickly being able to surface information. So we've built out a little chatbot example to show you how you can achieve this. Now, one of the things that we often find is that even though a company, a legal company, might have a very pretty front-end SharePoint. So here's a SharePoint intranet we've built for a legal firm where you can see recent documents, case information, jumping directly to things like creating a new case, submitting expenses, useful links, the CPD tracker type of information. All of this is a very typical SharePoint intranet page. However, even without that, often legal companies have very poor kind of document management, as in they have documents all over the place. So say, for example, we've got these cases. These are case folders, and in each case, we have a bunch of different documents which are not being tagged in any way, shape, or form. They're literally just plonked into this. Maybe they've been dragged and dropped from an email chain, and they've been dropped directly into here. And essentially, it's something which is unorganized, very difficult to find. You would really struggle to find information using the search library to find information on this particular documents. Now, what we can do is we can use, going back to our chatbot area, we could use the case law finder to find information. So let's say, for example, on this case, the Jones versus Smith case, maybe we want to get a summary of what that case is. So I could say, please give me a summary on the Jones versus, was it Jones versus Smith? Jones versus Smith case. And now what, again, this is doing is it's going to jump in and contextualize this, understand which set of documents we're talking about. And there we go. It's summarized this. So it said plaintiff, defendant, the nature of the dispute, key dates, claims, legal proceedings, the assigned solicitor, things like that. Loads of information. So we could drill directly into this further. We could ask some more questions. We could say something like, I don't know. Let's have a little look at this. So let's have a little look at some of the information that it contains. Correspondence logs, court filings, legal opinion. So maybe I could go into here and say, please give me a summary of the correspondence. And again, because all of this is stored in SharePoint, it's all been dragged in, all the different emails and things like that, you can see it's summarizing this. So you can exactly see on the exact date, time, and everything that the different correspondence was sent, who said what and when, the summaries of this, and it makes the kind of gathering of knowledge and information about that case so much easier because we have this in place. So how can Valto help you deploy solutions like this? Well, following on from this, I suggest that you book in a free 1-hour consultation with us. There's a link in the description below, and you can have a chat with some of our AI solution experts to find out what the best solution will be for you. Following on from that, we do have a paid for engagement, which is a workshop. And essentially with this, we give you information about what is the best AI solution for you and make sure you understand all of the different options you have, the different products, the different licenses, what's the most cost efficient way of licensing all of this, because it can get very expensive if you don't know what you're doing. And we have had a number of people come to us where they've tried to set things up themselves, and actually they've ended up burning through thousands of pounds of AI credits because they didn't set it up correctly, and it ended up in a loop where it was paying over and over and over again. We do offer fixed price builds. So as part of that workshop, we will talk to you about if we were to build a knowledge base for you, or if we were to look at building out an AI solution over the top of your existing knowledge base. We can offer you a fixed price for both the knowledge base or the chatbot that sits over the top of it. So if this all sounds good, use the contact link in the description below, and we will get in contact with you. Thank you very much for watching this webinar today, and keep your eyes peeled for our future webinars.